So, everybody welcome again, and especially bonjour à Roger. Thank you very much that you take your time to be with us today. And I'm happy and proud to announce Friedrich. Friedrich von Bohlen will give you an overview about his life in life science. And I had no clue when it was started in 2003 that ever one of the main topics of health think tank would be navigation. So, Friedrich, thank you very much for being here and for giving this very meaningful input of your long-term work and your long-term goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And let me start with that the most difficult part of creating the presentation was to spell the word Sünjhaid right. Because even for Germans, I can tell you this is, how to say, it's a rare dialect, you wouldn't understand. So, fortunately you gave us translation. Then the second thing I would like to say is, Germans coming to United States, in particular San Diego, talking about genomics revolutions. This is as if you have Mongolians coming to Stuttgart telling Porsche about how to build sports cars. I'm very glad to being here, but you are the guys who created all this and who are demonstrating the world how to implement new technologies and new medicines here in the future of medicine. So I'm pretty aware of this, but it's a bit like sports, and you're not coming on the field to not play. So we also want to play, and we also think we can contribute here at least somewhat to this genomics revolution that is taking place these days. I want to talk about on the example of molecular health, which is a company I will tell a bit more about in a second. I want to talk about why one can see, and we heard it I think we pretty much heard it from the talk before, that the whole personalization of everything, I would say, he was a bit broader than I can be, the personalization of everything goes hand in hand with information management, and he showed us where the big data and the genomics stand in the adaptation and awareness of society and stakeholders, and I would agree. I would agree that after a certain phase of hype and a certain phase of sobering, now comes the time of harvesting. And the only thing here with regard to myself I want to mention is that the company that I had founded and I was CEO at in the year 2000, Lion Biosystem, was a company who wrote the middleware for Celera. So Craig is now here in San Diego, as you know better than I do. And so we didn't sequence the genome, but we were an important part of making that accessible and presentable to the world. And this company here, Molecular Health, has actually taken advantage of this, and we're trying to move this bar further, namely into daily routine. So, it is about engineering the medical revolution, and the engineering has several parts, and I will talk about them in a moment. It was 10 years ago, namely 11 now, 2004, when we founded Molecular Health. And the idea was mostly based on the human genome and all the omics that were obviously coming up, and it's clear in a matter of time that they become accessible. Only the genome, I would say today, is accessible, but the others will follow. The idea is to use these information to create a new way, a better educated way to prevent, diagnose, and treat diseases. And I will tell you in a second how we do this. And I mean, this is all not new to you. I mean, I'm just summarizing what you all know, but I want to set the stage here. And I mean, for those of you who are not in that daily business, maybe it's a good start point. I mean, the challenge of personalized and precision medicine is to really combine the individual molecular and clinical information of one patient with all biomedical and pharmacologic knowledge in a way that it can be practically be used and applied for better medicine. So, I mean, there are several things in there. It is not enough that it can be used. It has to be used practically. You have to be able to use it day by day, routinely, reproducibly, and it has to lead to better medicine. Our discussion from before, you know, how to regulate this. We can talk about this in a moment. It has to be payable. I mean, payers come into this game. So it's a whole laundry list that has to be kept in mind. And if you want to do this, what you need is a completely new type of information technology. So what is the complexity? And this is a complexity here. I mean, what you have is one patient with a molecular disease. And I mean, we're starting with cancer because everyone's starting with cancer because cancer is the disease that is thought to be molecularly best understood. Whether this is true or not is another question, but at least, I mean, there's a lot going on. I mean, from this patient, you get 2 micrograms or whatever less in the future of DNA. That is giving you information about 3 million positions in the human genome, 3 billion positions in the human genome. And if you take somatic and germline, it is twice 3 billion, of course. Coding for something like, you heard 30,000 before, I say 20,000. I mean, you see science is not exact yet. Disease-relevant genes. For, as of today, 600 different cancers. I completely agree that the number 600 is a transient number. It's going to increase because with a better understanding of the molecular profiling, at the end, I mean, I used to say you have as many cancers as cancer patients you have. You just don't know it yet. And, it's surely you have some hotspots, surely you have some, let's say, clusters here in the disease organization, but you have to look into many details, many more details than 600 cancer types at least can qualify. You have 8,000 approved medications today. Not only in oncology, but all over, and you have to have all medication in mind if you want to treat a disease, because those of you who are in this field, you know that, I mean, you may have concomitant effects or whatever, where you have to also look to treat chemokines or whatever, and then you sometimes end up with antiviral drugs, for example, to add them here to a certain treatment, and that's nothing which is in the label. This is nothing that you think of first, but if you think that this is the molecular profile of the disease telling you, then you have to keep that in mind. You have about 10,000 clinical studies running and more than 23 million scientific publications. Number is continuously growing. If you really, really, really want to understand and want to get an access to what you're dealing here to treat one patient's cancer. So the paradigm shift in treatment, as much as we see this, is that, and we heard that before, and I don't have to repeat this, you know, he was even more drastic than I. When I say observation-based medicine, he talked about the dead body medicine into a non-dead body medicine, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, the observation here from pathology, but also, of course, of living patients into a truly evidence-based medicine. And that leads to a personalized medicine that will impact all stakeholders in this industry and cycle. It is, and I will come to this in a moment, it's the drug developers, it is the diagnostics providers, it's the regulators, the payers, but most importantly, the patient. And I will not go into detail on that topic, but I can also only second to what we heard before. I mean, regulators will have to completely change the way how to regulate drug development. because, I mean, with the ability to on a molecular basis, stratify patients, you come to a point where, yeah, you may have a very small group of people only where you get the label for, but that label at the very end is actually, and this is a big transition that needs to take place, and we heard that before, it is, I mean, I always describe it like a cube you have in front of you. On the x-axis you have the indication, on the y-axis you have the treatments, and then from the NCCN guidelines or wherever, you know which disease in which state, how to treat, by what. And the third axis, we're starting to learn on molecular situations like the biomarkers that give us a certain better understanding on at least certain indications of drugs. And that cube is flipping. I mean, on the y-axis, you will continue to have the treatments, but the x-axis is going to be the molecular subtype. And with the, I mean, zillions of subtypes you can imagine, because any combination here of mutation can create a new subtype. I mean, this cube gets a completely different dimension, and only the third axis at the end will probably remain somewhat, you know, organ specificity or like that. So that is something regulators will have to cope up with, and I can only say from our experience, they are lagging behind, which has advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantage is that we're not where we should be. The advantage is that under, I hope no one is here from the FDA, under stupid, clear cap regulations, you can do all this here. I mean, it's a complete joke. Yeah, I mean, think about what that means, but it doesn't matter, it works. And as long as it works, it works. So, also, this is nothing really new for you, but maybe it's another way of presentation, so this is why I show this. I completely agree with what we heard before. I mean, a patient is not a patient anymore. A patient will much more move into the consumer side of the whole equation. And a good part for the reasons that we heard on this 45-year-old woman situation before, because if you have options that trade off between efficacy and quality, for example, and you have these options and you have them today, then I think it is not only a matter of the doctor making that decision for you, it is yourself and your relatives who need to be heard what you really want. And I mean, on the other, you need to know as a relative what it means if you trade off efficacy against quality, because there goes along a certain inherent risk. But I mean, at least many cancer patients I know, and you know more probably than I do, but they would trade this off against quality of life. And I have thought often about myself, because the likelihood to get cancer is for me as high and as low as for everyone else. And I don't know what I would do, but I would probably also, I mean, from a certain time point at least, go for the quality. Okay, so, I mean, on the more healthy side of what we're dealing with is the risks that we all have and that are intrinsic also in our genome. I mean, my view is, keep it short, cancer is the price of evolution. I don't need to go into detail. Mutations take place, and they take place wherever. There may be, I don't know, hotter spots than other, but it happens, yeah? And without evolution, we wouldn't sit here, so that's maybe, you know, that's the other side. Okay, you can do something on the preventive side. If you are getting ill, I mean, you need to be diagnosed and then treated, of course. So what that means is, if you translate that here more on the molecular side, I mean, you can have, you may want to have, you may be allowed to, you may not be, I mean, to get better transparency about your individual predisposition. I mean, this is what 23 and companies like this are doing a lot. Then you can do somehow, I mean, in a certain degree, more or less intelligent, do precise prevention reflecting certain lifestyles. I mean, there are certain things one can always do, like stop smoking, and there are other things that may be more specific. Well, if if you get ill, I mean, what you need is a real reliable and exact diagnosis, and in a molecular disease situation like cancer, and it's not only cancer, but like cancer, exact diagnosis can only be, even today and in the future anyway, the inclusion and integration of the molecular situation. And then, of course, the best possible medicine, which not only means most efficacious, but also safe. So on the one side, you have the keep me well. On the other side, you have the get me well part of the cycle. And this is actually what this company here is a bit about. A little anecdote here on the logo. I mean, the logo comes from, I forgot his name, but comes from a New York designer, bold. Yeah, it's a bit bold. And it's, and some of you may have, for some of you that may recall something or not, I give you translational help because we're on the West Coast and not in Europe. I mean, this resembles an apple, and there's a very important apple in European history. This is the, I mean, at least what Swiss think, you know, made Switzerland to Switzerland, namely the Wilhelm Tell story. The truth behind the Wilhelm Tell story is that Wilhelm Tell was historically is not a person that really existed, but it was a German poet, Schiller, who created Wilhelm Tell. So all I want to say is this logo has a lot of connotation, you know, about precision, about people who really lived, people who were supposed to live, but I mean, hitting the arrow, hitting the apple on the head of your son, probably is not a bad. In a very difficult personal situation, because if he had not hit the arrow, according to the story, he would have been killed. So he did it, and we think that it is really important under difficult environmental situations, namely treating difficult, life-threatening diseases, to do the right decisions and hopefully hit it. So what this means is on this northern side of this circle, I mean, it's about personalized risk and prevention, which I will not be talking about. And on the lower side, sorry, this flipped out of the circle, personalized diagnosis and therapy, and this is what I want to talk about. And personalized medicine R&D, of course, includes basic research. It's this whole study design, the diagnostic industry, pharmaceutical industry, Center of Excellence, medical associations, that all will need to change. They're all part of the ecosystem that all needs to change somehow when this becomes reality in these days. So very, very few information about the company. We are in the United States and Europe. This year is Boston. I mean, Boston is more here. I know it because we live in Boston since 3 years, yeah, so I should be knowing this. This year, even the Woodlands is more over here, so thank you for correcting. The third location in the United States will be in California, so we're still trying to figure out where. We have options. In Europe, we're in Heidelberg, in Germany. This is where we have our development, and the team comes very much from the old line team, not only. I mean, we have added that by a couple of people, whereas in the United States, I mean, we run our CLIA certified laboratory, mostly under US oncology, former US oncology management. Boston is sales, marketing, business administration. Since the beginning, we are working with the MD Anderson Cancer Center, who we have an extended strategic relationship with. I mean, I think I don't need to explain why, because, I mean, today it's not such a big deal, but 10 years ago, when you want to develop these systems, you need to have clinical data. And, I mean, we went through the yellow pages. Honestly, we went through the yellow pages, and number one by size was MD Anderson. At that time, I did not know what the climate in Houston was, because otherwise I think we would have chosen number 2 or number 3. Anyway, no, it's a great relationship, and we learned a lot. This is very much, as I say, on clinical research, IT, on biomarker identification, patient cases, analyses, and they They have a really, really interesting phase 1 program, which is, some of you may have read about or know about, which is a truly, I would say, innovative way of applying developmental drugs under evidence-based situations to patients who match the profile, and really see with few patients only whether a certain combination or a certain new drug has the effect or not. I mean, if you want to be a bit cynical, you can say it's an extended preclinical research in man, yeah. But phase 1 patients more often are out therapied, and I think ethically this is acceptable. And then the IPCT, the Institute for Personalized Cancer Treatment. Then this is never bad. I mean, if you serve the police, yeah, because that gives you some advantages. We are working since 3 years with the FDA. I mean, the FDA has come to us. And there's also a story behind that. Some of you may remember that the FDA was close or short to sue. I think I'm not so good with these pharma companies, but I think it was GlaxoSmithKline on pioglitazone. It is a statin, and they were accusing them for having held back safety information, namely information who lead to cardiac side effects, including casualties. And part of our system, and I will show this in a second, is a safety system that includes all the literature references and adverse event reports of the FDA and the World Health Organization, and digests, integrates them, and shows them, presents them. And there was a meeting, there was a conference where FDA guys were and we were, and we were talking to them, and we said, well, we give you a good advice, don't sue GlaxoSmithKline. And they said, why shouldn't we sue them? And then we said, because you knew it since 2002. Well, at least you could have known since 2002. By the way, it's your own data. Yeah. So, and of course that created and triggered their interest, and now they licensed our system and they use it. I will explain that system in a moment. They use it internally because what we did and what we're doing, and you will see in a moment why, we translated all drugs into the mechanism of action level, because this is the only way how you can, so to say, integrate and combine intelligence on how to treat patients on basis of their molecular profiles, because the molecular profiles is a language of biologic structure, and you can only compare and ask questions on structure-structure interactions if you do the same on the drug side. I mean, you need to have the same language, if you will, on the drug side. And since we did that, and we know the mechanism of action of all drugs, not only cancer drugs, yeah, we can show how side effects may not only be observational based, predictable or understandable, but mechanism based. And that gives you insights on molecular situations in the patients where drugs may be applied or not. And this is what the FDA is doing these days, and they will want to extend that. And then we have technology partners. I mean, GATC is a pretty simple one. I mean, they do the sequencing for us in Europe. SAP is a more interesting one. They have a new database technology. I know in California this is nothing people want to hear and nothing people are interested about, because Oracle has it and does it better anyway. Joking. This HANA technology is not a bad thing. It is an in-memory database that runs, so to say, on processor clusters, which allows to speed up certain calculations by a factor of 10,000. And if we talk about big data, we heard about big data before. And if you think about, and I'll come to the numbers in a moment, if you think about population observations, or even if you think about, I mean, this is the situation that I always have in mind. If you think about a doctor who has a molecular-based treatment decision support report in front of him, and the patient asks a question and says, what do I do if we take this drug out and we put this drug in? And if you put that into the system and you wait more than 20 seconds, you can go home. So you better have a system that allows you to give you this answer, really at real time, and you have to have a lot of data, and a lot of information running in the background. This is why we think that a super fast database technology is not the prerequisite and necessity today, but it will be the necessity in the very near future. And I have not seen anyone else who has, so to say, putting this on his or her agenda, but this is another part where I see technology and medicine running here into each other. And then a couple of other partners more on the publisher and database side, because to build up the databases we build up, we need a lot of text information. Actually, we need the primary literature. So with wherever you cannot get the primary literature from publicly, we have basically licensed these data files from the publishers. So a few words about the technology. Don't worry, I don't go too much into the machine room. So we think the technology is on the forefront. It is the attempt to merge information technologies with science and medicine, and for what you will see in a second. This slide is, although it's very rich, it's a very, very important slide, because actually if you understand this slide, you understand more or less how we do it. Let's start from the top to the bottom. Give me 2 or 3 minutes for this slide, because again, this is important. What you can do is you can exploit, detect, derive relationships among these diverse data sources, and I'll show in a moment how we do that. You can structure content and relationships. You can produce databases. We have about 600 databases produced by ourselves, from the literature and from other databases to come up with a workflow for the doctor. So what we did is we clustered them, and this is only the meta-clustering here on genes and proteins, which includes the entire associated knowledge of all human genes and proteins to be able to aggregate, to relate, and to read out of any level of representation. It doesn't matter, it's on the chromosome level, the gene, transcript, or protein level. Then all indications, on the medical side, necessary or appropriate for different domains. The biomarkers we have, I'll show you in a moment an example. We have all known and presumed biomarkers with their corresponding evidence, and even if it's only a literature mark. As I said before, I think we know everything about drugs, and this is not the Thomson Reuters database, the drug database. This is about the mechanism of each and every drug, and the way we did it was actually through text mining. We added all this information from the literature. Then, of course, the whole entire biomedical knowledge, scientific publication studies, PubMed content in the publications, and other databases. I don't want to go so much in detail. Then this is all updated on a regular time scale, and the updates will include new information, of course, and it's not only the information but also the knowledge you can capture and get. So what that means, of course, is when you run that system for a certain question and you run that question a year later, you will always need to know which version of the system you have been using, because the system is growing, it is learning, it is getting better. Is this a reason to wait and not to do it today? No. Yeah. People traveled around the world even when Africa was not discovered. Yeah, but traveling will become easier, of course, year by year. This is for sure. But the important message is you can. So, and that is then the reflection here on the more, this is the same slide, a bit more schematic here. I mean, this is a bit the logic of the system. We have the ingest level where we import through text extraction here a lot of information data, where we build up these reference databases, as I said, 600 altogether. And then off top on the quality side, through certain feedback circles, we do text mining and curation to secure the quality of the data. So only one example here. I'll give you two examples. The one example here is for the biomarker database. How does that look like? I mean, we build it from the bottom to the top. We build it through two lines of information. The one line is that we take, of course, all the FDA drug label information, which is accessible, and the NCCN guidelines. That's easy. Then we do through text data mining curation. I mean, we look into all clinical studies and the scientific literature. I mean, all scientific literature, build up that database, and that includes today, as of today, these 5,568 predictive biomarkers, of which 104 are endorsed, 2,037 are in the clinics, and 3,429 are in the preclinics. It's still a biomarker, and maybe not as good as an endorsed, but before you know nothing, you take a biomarker, which is in the preclinics. We have unique genetic alterations included, SNVs, deletions, insertions, fusion genes, for 120 cancer indications coming from the literature. In this case, 120 indications for 565 drug treatments and several database facts. I mean, this is how that database looks like. It's a living database that grows and changes every day with new information. This is a bit more complex here, but actually it's also simple. This is our consolidated drug resource. I mean, how we, so to say, report and store drug information. And I mean, you see you have a lot of various input sources like Thomson Pharma data or drugs at FDA or the Orange Book or whatever. And what we do here on the right-hand side, that we map the data sources using standardized chemical structures and biological sequences. I said that before, because it's the only way how you at the end can really query questions on the same language, if you will. And that in that database, in this consolidated drug resource database, you see on the lower part of the slide, I mean, you can now sort and query and ask for completely various, I mean, aspects. I mean, like drug labels, therapeutic stages, and drug-drug interaction, drug-protein interaction, metabolizing enzymes. This is what the FDA is interested in, the metabolizing enzymes, because if you see mutations on the metabolizing enzyme side, and if you sequence a patient, you see his metabolic enzyme kind of setup, then you can see which cytochromes or whatever, so to say, are in which molecular or genetic situation, and then from there you can see which kind of drug or drug classes or chemical structures, so to say, get fast or slowly metabolized or get flooded here in the blood or wherever, and from there you can say a lot about, you know, whether a certain drug will lead to side effects or not. And this you can only do this if you come to a common denominator, and this is so to say the syntax behind this commonality. So very quickly, I mean, how does this build up from the process flow? I mean, from the biomedical databases, we build up through text mining, text language interpretation. We integrate and we import this information, so to say, into what we call the nucleus. This is the nucleus we call. The nucleus is our database system here, underlying database system. Then what we do is we send these databases, we send these data into curation interfaces. I mean, every entry gets curated automatically or by hand. I mean, text mining or manually. And this goes back then here into the system together with the publications that of course also go through text mining into the system. So this is in a way the workflow, how we build that up. And so at the end, what we have, and this is only here for one database, namely the drug database, we have the drug information as a database, which is part of our biomedical data warehouse. And we have then here the tools or the algorithms or workflows of algorithms, so to say, that are on top of and make sure that the import process and the quality assurance process takes place automatically. And we do that for all these 600 databases. Now we come to the next level, the engines, namely, so to say, now you've got the database, what do you do with the database? So to do something with the database, of course, you need to work with them, and what these engines or algorithms or clusters do, we distill, analyze, combine, interpret patients' clinical molecular data together with these reference data from that biomedical warehouse. And that allows to do a couple of things, namely A, clinical interpretation of patient data, B, treatment decision support, and C, full expert drill down. That is, for example, important for pharma companies or other kind of players in this field who do not want to do treatment decision support but want to use these data or information for other questions like, if this is a profile of my drug, how should the patient look like, for example? So, I mean, very simple. On the bottom layer, you have all these available information, databases, publications, and whatever. This goes into the nucleus in the way I showed before, and then goes into our various interpretation engines. I will talk about these in a moment. We have 5 of them for various applications, for various customer bases, customer groups. But important is that the database, I mean, so to say, what this is built on is the same for all of them. So this is, I mean, this is an example now for one of the products that we have, and that is a report for oncologists who have decided to profile molecularly on basis of the genome a patient. I mean, what you get is a summary slide that is the green part of the slide that shows you what treatment options for this patient he should think about. We don't tell them what he should be doing. We give him only information what he should be thinking about. I mean, what he's doing is his and remains his decision. I mean, this is important. And we give them all the information. Let me see, do I have? Yeah. We give them all the information that is necessary. For example, here in this case, this is a drug which is FDA approved. Open trials are running. This is a biomarker that is, so to say, validating the reasoning for the drug and the biomarker validity. I mean, 3 green spots means it is a clinically endorsed biomarker by the FDA. Here, the second drug, I mean, this is a drug in oncology, but it's off-label for that indication. Again, a biomarker, but this is a clinical biomarker. 2 dots means it is in the clinic, so it's not endorsed yet. And this is in the third drug. This is an IND, investigation, new drug, so it's not on the market yet. There's also a biomarker, but that biomarker is only preclinically validated. I mean, so, and then there's more information about it. Then on the safety side, you get information about drugs that are endorsed in this indication, but here in this case, sunitinib and crilotinib would not work. They have a lack of efficacy. There's again the biomarker validity and what that leads to. I mean, the tumor would be resistant to the drug. I mean, this is very important because, I mean, if you get treated with such a drug, yeah, and you know it doesn't work, not a good idea. And then you get also information about the toxicity, namely the reason, what I said before, when certain chemical structures or drug interact with certain metabolizing enzymes like cytochromes and lead to certain effects, then you can predict pretty well whether, so to say, this leads to side effects or not. Then here, this is, I mean, like the imatinib example, you get all the additional information here in the report about open trials, drug-drug interaction. And beside that report, I mean, you get an interface to a web page where you can drill down all this information here also in the system. The same is true here for for the lacking of efficacy drugs and the toxic drugs. So, I mean, you get all this information here in a 10-page report. Then this is a little bit more detail here. I mean, also in this report, I mean, you get more information about the biomarkers, about the evidence levels, about conflicting evidence. I mean, this is also important, also what we heard in the presentation before. I mean, here, for example, we see a conflicting evidence in literature. It's interesting when we talk to doctors about this. The first question that always comes is, what do you do with conflicting information? And I always think this is a great question, but I would like to ask the question, what do you do if you have a conflicting information? Because you don't have that, because you don't know that, because you don't have the time to go into the literature and find that out. So, very good question, yeah, but that has never been your problem before in your practice, and now that's the first question you're bothering me with, yeah. So, okay, anyway, but our answer is, we show you. We just show you. When we see conflicting information, we don't know what's true. I mean, the only thing we can do is we can show. And then if he thinks that this is the question he has to really drill down, I mean, he can go into literature and see who has published and when where that comes from, and because you can go down until the until the original paper. And I mean, if you think, okay, this is my colleague who has always written and published wrongly, I mean, you know, he can discard. And he can overrule, so to say, the decision here. But I mean, what I said also here, conflicting evidence, I mean, we bring this up, and that is another level of information. And then it goes even deeper here. I mean, you get information here about, for example, on that biomarker from 136 reads. I mean, you do a certain depth of sequencing and how many reads you have found that. I mean, whether that was germline or somatic. I mean, on the average quality score. I mean, you can really, you get all the information. If you really think that this information is extremely important and you want to have 100% quality and guarantee, you can go after and see where that comes from. So I mean, all I want to say is, I mean, this report is really rich. It is a really rich report, and it's fully automatic. I mean, when we get the raw sequence data from a machine, in Lumina, HiSeq, to this report, 12 hours. And if you have HANA database below, we come below an hour. So sequencing today is a bottleneck. I mean, the sequencing today, as you know, for this quality of sequencing, 10 days, maybe 7, maybe 12, I don't know. So this is not a big thing anymore. Okay, you have, of course, someone reading over this. I mean, we don't throw this out like here it is. I mean, we have a doctor on our side who goes over and proofreads and makes sure that, you know, nothing is forgotten or wrong. But the process, I mean, is really, really fast. And if you think about, and that's what we hear often from doctors, they say, well, I mean, we have a high-risk patient or late stage or whatever. I mean, how long does it take? I mean, the time-limiting factor is sequencing. I mean, we can give the reports in 2 weeks. I mean, they cannot always wait 2 weeks because they have to make treatment decisions very soon. But, I mean, with the sequencing technologies getting better and faster and cheaper anyway, I mean, 2 or 3 years from now, I mean, you get the result the same day. And I'm not talking about, this is not a vision. I mean, this is reality. So, quick look on the business side. I mean, we had started 2000. I mean, the company is a 10-year-old startup, yeah, but it took that time to build these systems. And this is why I'm not afraid of anyone else trying to do this. And I see all these companies coming up here who try to do this. I mean, variant calling, it's not a big deal. Yeah, variant prioritization is not a big deal. I mean, everyone can do that. But I mean, what we've built here on that system and on the syntax side, in particular also with the drug database, I mean, I'm not aware of anyone else who can do this. I'm pretty aware that we're not the only one who will be doing this, and I'm pretty aware that there will be more than one company who will play an important role in this industry, and I don't mind as long as we are one of them. At least we're trying hard. So the original business approach, about 1.5 years old, was that we had one product, one service, and that was a treatment decision support service here in the United States through our CLIA lab. There was one sales channel, community oncologists only, so that was one segment. Now, from the platform and this suite of targeted application services, I mean, there are many channels beyond the oncologist to go into different segments. And very quickly, what 3 of these products are. I mean, Treatment Map, you saw that before. This was the treatment decision support report. I mean, based on next generation sequencing, it's an analytical service, treatment decision support that helps a physician to find the safest and most effective treatment. This is available in the United States, as I said before, under CLIA CAP certification. To me, the worst certification you can have, but again, we take it for granted. In the EMEA, we talked about it before, it's a medical device. In the United States, we have to have sequencing under our roof. In Europe, we can buy sequencing around the corner. I mean, it's a different view. Safety Map, this is what the FDA uses. This is a content analytics solution that can be utilized with or without patient data for drug de-risking and drug safety analysis, for pharma R&D, regulatory authorities, or insurances. I mean, insurers are very interested in this because when you get a phone call from CVS or Walmart, I mean, on the next prescription, and you had a system like this where you could, so to say, double check whether this is for this patient safe or not. I mean, that is something they're really interested in. Discovery Map, this is mostly here with regard with pharma companies in mind, namely to help stratifying patients or cohorts for clinical trial design, drug mode of action, drug resistance, drug toxicity. And here as of today, we have 2 pharma deals where we run this through, and I'm pretty sure that this will further grow. So another way of showing this, I mean, we have on the market deployment, we have the medical device or the medical service here as an end-to-end service, which was certified process, including lab service. This is what we do with Treatment Map. Then we do custom solutions, I mean, where we include custom content, integration application, professional services. And then we have a corporate oncology program for employees where we offer this kind of service for enterprises, for their employees, because, as I said before, cancer is a statistic disease, and in a company with 100,000 employees, you can do the math. 2,000 do have cancer, and about 400 get cancer every year. And there are costs associated with this. I'm not cynical by saying this, but this is so. And beside the, individual fate, there are costs associated with this. And according to a study, these costs, only the productivity cost per cancer patient per year are in the range of $9,000 per year. This is not from me. This is a Lancet study. So if you had a system, so to say, that would help you to, optimally diagnose and treat these cancer patients, you would not cure them, of course, at all. But if you, can make them create faster and better, even for a company, you may be able to save costs, beside the fact that you're just a good-looking employer. So that is something we're introducing right now in Germany and in the United States. We have 2 customers in Germany. We have none in the United States yet, but we talk about with 40 companies at this time. And then we can do certain subscription services, of course, to databases, for example. So another way of showing that, we're approaching community oncologists, hospital groups, HMOs, laboratory services, payers, cancer centers on the service provider side. On the industry, it is pharma, then all industries for COPE, nutrition, health, wellness. Nestle came to us and said, if you did ever anything outside oncology, we're the first one to deal with you. And we will want to go outside oncology, but we have to start somewhere. And then, of course, value-added partners, insulin suppliers, Illumina is around the corner. They are definitely interested in these kind of services. Okay, they have their own bioinformatics, but I think this is not bioinformatics what we have. And then software partner, I mentioned SAP, but I can tell you we speak to all the usual suspects. So what is the possible value position here? I may go a bit far, but in Germany I would definitely go too far. In America you would probably not take notice. But I mean, if you think about where this whole thing comes from, and here you see the time axis. I mean, the IT industry started very much with enterprise data. This was about efficiency and production operations. I mean, the business model was licensing, and the capability was collect, relate business data and processes. That brought SAP, Oracle, and others where they are. Then came the move here with the internet into the consumer data. I mean, with Google, Facebook, and others, of course, eBay, and so forth. Big winners. I mean, here the value is targeting in sales and marketing. The business model is on the advertising side. And capabilities manage, analyze big data. And if you think now on this introduction of IT into molecular-based medicine, question is, what is the value for healthcare? I mean, it will run out of cloud computing, and this is where you will charge it for. I mean, the time, so to say, for computing. And the capability is a clinical interpretation and use of molecular data for various questions, as I showed before. Yeah, and we hope, of course, that molecular health is one of them here remaining at the end on this slide, but this is future. Let's see. So the key strategic elements that we are pursuing is that we run a platform strategy, we have a key account strategy, and we run COPE. And COPE has another effect, of course, because if we talk to all these companies about their employer programs, I mean, this is a kind of a pre-selling here for other things we do. And then we have the alliance management and reseller program, as I said before, with lab partners, with value-added resellers, OEM collaborations, strategic cloud partners, complementary software programs. I mean, that demonstrates the channel approach. And I think this is important not only to win, it's also important to survive, because since the system can do what it can do, I think it would be stupid not to try to position ourselves as broad as possible in this industry, because, I mean, yeah, there may be cannibalizing effects, maybe. Yeah, I mean, some of our partners, some of our customers may want to do the same as we do, but I have a pretty simple view. I mean, they better do it with our technology than they do it with anybody else's technology. So in that regard, I'm not afraid of this. Have we thought through every detail in every contract and business model? Probably not, but let's cross the bridge when we get there. Yeah, and this is actually what this is all about. Is this the future? In Germany, we would probably say it is the future, but here we are not in Germany. This is reality today. And as we heard before, the DNA sequence is only but the beginning. The epigenome will follow. The transcriptome is more or less there, maybe not in a way that we can use it in that speed. The proteome will come, the metabolome will come, and probably many other omes that we're not aware of yet. But yeah, that will change medicine possibly more than anything else ever before, because it is a real true transition from observation-based medicine into molecular-based medicine or into science-based medicine. And only last point before I stop, the biggest discussion I have with German professors on this, and German professors are very highly regarded and important people in Germany, is how shall we learn all this? And it's not a stupid question, because you can put it into the curriculum for the next generation, but I mean, what about those who are out there and needing and trying to apply it in today's world? And the answer is very simple. As you can learn driving by going through a driver license, you can learn applying this by going through a licensing process. But the first step is, of course, to accept this. And the majority of the doctors do accept it, but we had one case in Heidelberg. I mean, he gave us a 10-yard distance to not enter his office anymore, because he told us, I mean, this is not the medicine he was educated for and he's believing in. Okay, I'm not telling the name, it doesn't matter, but we have these cases as well yet. Okay, thank you for listening.
So please take your questions. And it's a fantastic overview. And inside you...
You're biased anyway, come on.
Yes, but there's this molecular health. And then there's the system molecular health will deliver precise medicine. And I like very much your term you created, precise medicine. So, as we have today, for example, in cancer therapy, different departments from different medical background, when I only look at the future hospital to build, if we build like an automotive industry, which is quite common, the next prototype, maybe we have to change the hospital structure every 10, 15 years because the movement is so fast. And so can you maybe give this idea of cope? Because I think this is maybe, because these are influential leaders, they're running their companies on performing. They are performing often globally. When you have about 100,000 people working in your company, you're a global company. I guess so. This is the fact why you have this interest in this leading companies in US and in Germany. So when you will empower these leaders of these companies with this knowledge, they will have a total different look on the hospital industry. And I would like to ask everybody, what will this mean and bring up? Because I have grown up as MD in a hospital of the 19th century structure, which is based on the 18th century structure. And we are coming like a decade behind. Every industry is performing, and when we look on the levels of quality, when I look on the level of quality which is needed to build an airplane, perhaps you can help me, there are different levels. They have the highest level. And the quality and outcome in medicine is many steps under this quality we need in airplane industry. And I have no respect and no understanding why we are not performing together better. And there's so motivating side.
Thank you. My question is actually to that point and to what you have on the slide, is that we see the gradual uptake and adoption of digital health tools and by patients, and particularly those with diseases or cancers that motivate them where maybe death is an outcome, and they're motivated to find the treatment that may be the most effective for them. They tend to do lots of research or find various key opinion leaders or whomever seeking them out themselves, or actually go onto PubMed and try to make sense of these publications. Having digitized a lot of and keeping it current with a lot of the publications in cancer, have you considered marketing and selling directly to cancer patients with your reports to help them drive selection of therapy or push their physician?
Yeah, we have in our backyard, we have a consumer business model as well, which I didn't share here today yet because it is still, so to say, a bit under construction, but the answer is clearly yes. And I mean, honestly, I think it's have you seen this? I think it would be an exciting amendment to all this, because it creates a pull effect. Yeah, both an awareness and a pull effect. That would go through a completely different approach. I mean, you would go through on apps on the very simple side, apps for safety, because, you know, the safety side comes within. That can be, you know, this is something where you can really feed people quickly and cheaply with, and then you can build, I mean, like 23andMe does, but not on SNPs and whatever you can add, I mean, whatever you want. So the answer is clearly yes. The other thing we want to do is, I mean, as doctors as doctors get a report, I mean, we want to make that report accessible for patients as well. I mean, as we had before, I mean, when you push the bottom, I mean, one goes into the hospital file and one goes into your personal file. Why not? Why not? I mean, it's your data, it's your health, yeah? And I mean, then you can ask the question to the doctor, and that's why I'm convinced what I said before, that, I mean, the patient much more becomes a consumer, and the doctor, beside being a doctor, also becomes a soundboard and coach. I mean, you know, it's not about the one true treatment. It is really about talking about the advantages and disadvantages of doing this or not doing this. It will change dramatically. I mean, you know this. I mean,
so your company has offices in Germany, obviously, in the US. You live in the US, so you really operate in Europe and the United States. And so I'm wondering, as biotech entrepreneurs, what can Germans, Europeans learn from Americans? I mean, you hinted at that a few times. That's maybe a little bit more obvious, but also a little bit more interesting, maybe vice versa. What can Americans maybe learn from Europeans as biotech entrepreneurs? Just curious.
Very, very honestly, not much. I think, but that goes really deep into the machine room. I mean, the real difference between Europe and the United States is the capital market situation. It has nothing to do with entrepreneurial thinking or smarter or less smart people. It really has to do that America has a culture of venture capital, yeah, of equity money, whereas Germany has a culture from all our hidden champions in machine industry from debt financing. And that is a big, big, big difference in this industry. But if you do biotech, and in particular if you do drug development, I mean, if you don't think 100 million plus, you better should not start your endeavor. And that is an amount of money that people here, I mean, take Juno or whatever, you get overnight. Yeah, and in Germany, I mean, you start with 3 million from the German government. I mean, forget about that. So, because the first thing you do is when you get the 3 million is you go out and find the next 20. And that's not a CEO job, yeah, at least not in my view. So the biggest difference is actually that's the equity market situation between the United States and Germany. The second element, that is something I think we can better. I mean, we can first learn from the first one. The second one is this, I would say, the whole attitude in the United States versus Europe, culture of failure. Yeah, in America, if you do biotech, I mean, 90% of all drugs go into clinics fail. I mean, even with Pfizer. So that means 90% of all biotech companies or biotech approaches fail. Yeah, that means 9 out of 10 responsibles, you know, get a bloody nose someday. Yeah, in America, this is, I mean, you tell me. Yeah, so what? I mean, as long as you don't betray, so what? In Germany, you better think about selling your home, you know, and leaving the country. No, honestly, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but and this is why many people I know who could or would be interested to do this say, hey, I don't risk my existence for something I really believe in. So that's the second thing. What Americans can learn from Germans or Europeans in this industry, really, I really have to think hard. I mean, maybe the only thing, and I'm talking here more about molecular health and drug development. I mean, one on the medical service side, a competitor here in the United States, most of you know, is Foundation Medicine. They don't have an IT like we do. I mean, they have a panel, period, sell it. We would not dare to go out with such a crappy product. I mean, honestly, because we think it's sorry, don't cite me, but we think it's close to fraud. Yeah, that's maybe the European way. We tend to over-engineer, maybe, that costs time, but the quality, I think, of what we deliver is actually normally very good. So I don't say you have a bad quality, but your quality is just good enough to go out to the market and sell it, and then through the market capturing, improve your quality. I mean, we improve quality, and then go out and find out the market is already occupied. So I don't know which is better. I mean, probably yours is better because your work's better. But with something like this, I believe quality cannot, I mean, quality is king. So, and that is something I think Europeans tend to have a bit better on their radar. But there's not much more that comes into my mind. And I hope I didn't offend anyone in the room here.
More questions? Comments? It's an overwhelming information, obviously, but it is probably which will turn our medicine in the next years and decades, and we can be happy that after internet and cell phone, now this modern technology comes also through to the patient access. And so, Friedrich, thank you very much. We are very happy to have you today with us and for dinner. And so we will make a turn over to Thilo.